When I'm writing this, SummerSlam is around the corner. 3 title matches announced. 2 of them are rematches. The third is a feud I genuinely couldn't explain the origin of if you asked me right now. That's where we are. If you love WWE, you know exactly what I mean. The Triple H era gave us some of the best storytelling the company has ever produced. The Bloodline. Roman Reigns walking into a building and the whole room shifting before he said a word. That was real, and it was genuinely great television, and I watched all of it. Right now, a lot of people are frustrated. The booking feels circular. Matches get announced with no story behind them. Feuds end, then restart with no explanation. The people the crowd is clearly ready to push to the top keep getting parked in the mid-card while the show fills time waiting for something big that hasn't arrived yet. You're not imagining it. The conversation online, in comment sections, on every wrestling podcast is the same. Something is missing, and nobody in the company seems in a hurry to find it. I still watch. I'll keep watching. When WWE gets it right, there's nothing like it. But right now is a good time to have something else on. The wrestling world right now is wider than it's been in decades. And one promotion that a lot of WWE fans haven't given a real chance? All Elite Wrestling. AEW runs on a different philosophy. The performers aren't handed scripts and character directions from a writer's room. They're given genuine creative ownership over who they are and how they get there. The result is characters with a density you can feel after 5 minutes, because the people playing them actually built them from the inside out. Fair warning, it can feel chaotic if you miss something, because the show doesn't stop to hold your hand. It moves like it trusts you to keep up. 5 performers show you exactly what that kind of freedom produces. You already know who Edge and Christian are, and you probably know the TLC matches. The ones where 2 guys with normal-sized bodies climbed 15-foot ladders and drove each other through tables for your entertainment, year after year, and made it look like they were enjoying it. You know the 5-second pose. You know Edge is one of the greatest heels in company history, and Christian as the guy who is always right there alongside him, just as good, somehow always a half step out of the spotlight. Both of them retired before they wanted to. Edge in 2011, cervical spinal stenosis. One more bad bump could paralyze him. Christian in 2014, concussion issues so severe the medical team wouldn't clear him. Edge came back to WWE in 2020, the Royal Rumble return. If you were watching, you remember that crowd. He worked WWE for 3 more years, had a real run that included a feud with Seth Rollins, and then, in late 2023, he signed with AEW, going by his real name, Adam Copeland. He told AEW he didn't want a greatest hits tour. He spent years working as a TV actor alongside the wrestling, characters in Vikings and Percy Jackson, and his whole approach to performance is built around finding the elemental truth first and letting the fiction follow from that. He wanted new opponents, new stories, new things to figure out. Christian came back to wrestling in 2021 and went to AEW. And what happened to Christian Cage there, the name he uses now, has no equivalent in anything he did before. He became the Patriarch. What that means? He started cutting promos targeting the deceased fathers of young wrestlers.
You have a father, and that dead.
A deliberate, patient, methodical character philosophy. He found wrestlers with holes in their lives, wrestlers like Jungle Boy, whose father Luke Perry died in 2019, and a teenager named Nick Wayne who lost his father young, and positioned himself as the superior replacement, the real father figure they actually needed, the one who understood what they were missing.
I was only giving Jungle Boy's mom the chance to apologize to me for giving birth to Jungle Boy.
AEW gives him significant freedom with his promos. He said publicly that he rarely tells anyone where he's going to take them. He walks out with bullet points and finds the wound in the room. The crowd starts anticipating where he's going to land before he gets there, almost holding their breath, waiting for the moment he crosses the line he was never supposed to cross. The narcissism goes beyond the promos. He had his enforcer Killswitch and turned into a weapon, physically win the TNT Championship for him, then carried the belt himself and claimed the title lineage. He made Killswitch stand silently behind him during promos. He wrestles in a sleeveless turtleneck, every time, without exception. He steals championship belts from children in the audience for photo opportunities. And he once berated his own biological daughter on live television.
Yes?
Can I have your belt?
You did not win this belt. Nobody touches this title but me. Go find your mother. Go. Security!
Every detail is a choice. The arrogance is architectural. People who've spent decades watching wrestling say Cage's Patriarch run is the best villain work they've seen in years. What makes that feel earned is the consistency. There's no moment where the character breaks to let you feel safe. He commits completely. That's rarer than it sounds. Nick Wayne is the clearest example of the actual manipulation underneath it all. Cage adopted him, spent months building him up, teaching him, giving him opportunities. Then slowly, one conversation at a time, turned him against everyone who'd actually cared about him, his mentors, his friendships. Eventually, his actual mother aligned with Cage, a development that made the whole thing feel wrong in a way a lot of wrestling villains aim for and almost none achieve. Cage kept going for years. Then Adam Copeland showed up, and the crowd immediately expected the reunion. 30 years of friendship, the 5-second pose, the nostalgic send-off. Cage rejected him. Publicly, completely, cold. Their feud ran through months of violent confrontations, the bitterness that only comes from people who actually know each other's weaknesses. It ended in Toronto in an I Quit match for the TNT Championship, their hometown. Copeland wore a Maple Leafs jersey borrowed from a fan, put a Bruins jersey on Cage, and they brawled through the penalty box while the crowd sang Copeland's entire entrance theme a cappella. The finish? Cage alone, handcuffed to the corner, no faction, no way out. Copeland kicked him low, repeatedly. Raised Spike, a nail-studded wooden paddle, over Cage's head. Cage said, "I quit." That finish required something. Copeland had to become the Patriarch to beat the Patriarch. Same calculated cruelty, same willingness to keep going past the point where a hero would stop. He won. Not cleanly. The reunion came. AEW had a problem to solve. The standard wrestling answer sacrifices one character for the sake of the story. This one kept both. Copeland accepted him, looked at 30 years of shared history, and decided that knowing your best friend is a monster doesn't mean he stops being your best friend. Cage didn't change. He stayed cruel, arrogant, manipulative. He just has Copeland standing next to him now, exasperated, occasionally appalled, completely unwilling to walk away. They won the AEW World Tag Team Championships at Double or Nothing 2026. Two 51-year-olds, a 19-minute New York street fight against FTR, with their partnership on the line if they lost. The reunion arrived. Just arrived honest. Christian Cage built one of the most psychologically layered villain characters in years, and he got to take it exactly as far as he wanted. Kenny Omega spent 15 years doing something else entirely. The character Kenny Omega spent years building was certainty. He called himself the best bout machine, said it loudly, constantly, without embarrassment, put it on merchandise, said it in promos in front of 20,000 people, and dared anyone to disagree. And the thing is, he backed it up. He produced matches people were still writing about years later. The wrestling world eventually started saying it back to him. Underneath the certainty was a conviction he worked hard to keep hidden. Omega started in WWE's developmental system, Deep South Wrestling, a minor territory, and left disillusioned. Traditional North American training methods didn't fit how his brain worked. He went to Japan, rebuilt himself physically and psychologically, and spent nearly a decade becoming a different kind of performer entirely. The version of Kenny Omega who existed by the time AEW launched was assembled piece by piece in a country where the style rewarded everything he'd been told wasn't useful. Alongside Kota Ibushi, his closest friend and tag partner. Ibushi was the natural, the kind of performer who makes everything look like it costs nothing in a way that can't be taught. Omega was exceptional, and knew from the inside exactly how different those two things are. The private conviction he carried was that for all the matches people called masterpieces, he was working in Ibushi's shadow. The arrogance was always armor, worn against that doubt alone. His finishing move, the One-Winged Angel, is named after Sephiroth, the villain from Final Fantasy VII. His knee strike, the V-Trigger, is named after a mechanic from Street Fighter. He built his moveset around video game mythology as deliberately as a character building a persona. When he loses, he treats the loss as a temporary glitch. Inevitable domination, briefly interrupted. The One-Winged Angel is the clearest expression of this. In years of elite competition across multiple continents and promotions, Omega has protected it with almost religious discipline. Kota Ibushi, the shadow he was always working in, remains the most famous person to ever kick out of it. The fact that it's the one person who mattered most is the part that makes the armor feel breakable. When AEW launched and Omega arrived as one of its founders, an executive vice president who helped build the company from a concept, the expectations were enormous. Early on, he struggled in ways nothing about his public persona could explain. AEW produced a video package using the visual language of the game Undertale to show the inside of his mental state. He hallucinated his friends despising him, saw himself failing. The audience who'd followed him understood immediately. This had always been there. His response was to bury it deeper than ever. He turned on the elite, the people he'd built something real with, and aligned with Don Callis, a manager who understood exactly which version of his ego to feed. Callis gave him the most dangerous thing anyone can offer someone running from their own doubt: unconditional validation. Omega captured the AEW World Championship, then the Impact World Championship from a third promotion, the Belt Collector. Every additional belt was another layer between himself and the question he refused to answer. AEW let it play out until something real forced the armor off. The person who finally took the title from him was Hangman Adam Page. Page had been Omega's tag partner, his closest ally in the company, the person Omega had mentored and then abandoned when the championship obsession took over. The bill arrived in the form of the one person who knew exactly what Omega had sacrificed to get there. Then, real life came for him, in a way the character couldn't perform out of. Late 2023, Omega collapsed and was hospitalized. A massive infected cyst in his colon he'd been misreading as a recurring hernia. Emergency surgery. He was approximately 24 hours from dying of a blood infection. For the first time, he talked openly about retirement. Said he didn't want to be the version of himself who works until the wheels fall off. He came back at the Tokyo Dome in January 2025 and had the match of the year. 31 minutes against Gabe Kidd, 5.25 stars. Kidd spending the whole match going after the abdomen that had nearly killed him. Omega won with the one-winged angel. Hiroshi Tanahashi wept at ringside. After that match, Omega said it would have been a good one to end his career on. He decided it wasn't. He's back now, chasing the AEW World Championship. The war with Swerve Strickland kicked off in early 2026. Strickland attacking him with a steel chain on live television. And it's going somewhere. The arrogance is still there. The doubt is finally visible. That took 15 years to build, and it's only this interesting because he was the one who built it. The person who just attacked him with a steel chain and reignited the whole main event picture is someone who built his entire character the same way. From nothing. From a goal he said out loud before anyone believed him. Swerve Strickland is one of the best performers on the planet right now, and he said exactly what he was going to do before he did any of it. You might know him from NXT, where he went by Isaiah Scott. Quick, athletic, clearly ready for a bigger stage. He wanted more room to find out who that character actually was, and went looking for it. In AEW, he built himself into a calculating, cold villain, leading the Mogul Embassy, his stable, alongside Prince Nana, a Ghanaian manager whose ringside dancing became one of the most infectiously joyful things in wrestling. A complete tonal contrast to Strickland's dangerous intensity. The music kicks in, Nana starts moving, and before Strickland has done anything, the crowd is already feeling something. You feel the combination before you can explain it. His background matters here. Strickland grew up moving between military bases, struggled financially for years, grinding through the independent circuit while supporting 2 children, still juggling bills at a point in his career when most people would have quit. He said publicly he was willing to do things that kept him up at night if it meant achieving his goals. The calm smile while he's doing something horrible to someone. That's the calculation made visible. His stated goal in AEW, said plainly and repeatedly,
New Year's resolution 2024 for me.
First African American AEW World Champion.
He said it like a man who'd arrived at a conclusion. The permission wasn't required. His feud with Hangman Adam Page started as a positioning rivalry. Strickland had singled out Page, called him the main character of All Elite Wrestling, who'd gone complacent. Their first match at WrestleDream in October 2023 ended with Strickland stealing the win through interference. Then he broke into Page's home, stood over his infant son's crib in the dark, on television, shot like a horror film, left a t-shirt behind as a calling card. By every convention of the business, that should have made him radioactive for years. Instead, the crowd started cheering. AEW recognized the crowd had made a decision and trusted it. Let him keep being exactly what he was. Let the character develop in the direction the audience was already pulling. The crowd heard a man who'd been told no for long enough that he'd stopped asking. Willing to sacrifice whatever it cost to get where he decided he was going. And they let him get away with things they never should have. Because watching someone fight that hard, with that much willingness to pay any price, there's something in that the business can't manufacture. April 2024, he challenged Samoa Joe for the AEW World Championship at Dynasty. Joe had been almost impossible to stop in AEW. Strickland survived. Swerve stomp, pin. First black AEW World Champion in company history. He held the title through the summer, including a defense against Christian Cage that went exactly as long as Cage thought it would, and then lost it at Wembley Stadium to Bryan Danielson in front of a crowd that broke the British attendance record. That loss mattered. What made it worse? Page interfered. Distracted Strickland at the wrong moment. The feud everyone thought was finished wasn't. What followed was the most violent chapter. Strickland had used money from his new AEW contract to buy back his childhood home in Washington State, the one his family had lost to foreclosure. Page burned it down on live television while Strickland watched from inside the arena, screaming at a screen. The match after that was an unsanctioned lights-out steel cage. No rules. Both men came out of it in different kinds of ruin. Strickland returned months later, appearing at the end of a world title match, clearing the ring, saying nothing. The crowd that had been waiting responded immediately. Early 2026, he attacked Kenny Omega with a steel chain on live television, and the whole main event picture shifted around him. The audience rewrote the parameters of what they needed him to be. That only happens when the performer is actually in control of the character. The man those rewritten parameters destroyed is next. Hangman Adam Page might be one of the best written characters in the modern era of professional wrestling. What he's been through since 2019 is the kind of long-form character work that makes you realize what the art form is actually capable of when the story keeps moving forward and the character has to keep living in it. For the first 3 years of AEW, Page was its emotional center. The anxious cowboy, the one who drank too much and doubted himself in a way that felt real. He was part of the elite from the beginning, alongside Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, the founding group who built AEW together. They were comfortable in the spotlight. Page always looked slightly like a man who'd wandered into the frame and kept waiting to be found out. He was frequently seen wandering the arena clutching a pitcher of beer. That was the whole character in one image, a man with enough talent to be the face of the company, drinking alone in the back because he couldn't figure out why the door kept not opening for him. He won the AEW World Championship, beating Kenny Omega. The crowd noise sounded like relief, like everyone had been holding their breath for 2 years and could finally exhale. Then came Swerve Strickland, and everything changed. Page descended somewhere dark. The violence he was capable of had always been in there, and Swerve brought it to the surface. By the end of it, Page had done things that would have ended most characters' arcs. In AEW, he had to carry them forward. He stopped fighting for championships, started doing things a person can't come back from. He attacked Christopher Daniels, a longtime friend and mentor who begged him to stop, and kept going. He interfered in Strickland's world title match at Wembley, potentially costing him the championship. And then, in one of AEW's most shocking storyline moments, he burned down Strickland's childhood home, bought back after Swerve reclaimed it from foreclosure, and sat outside with a drink and watched it go. Shot with a stillness that made it worse. He was calm. The crowd had rewarded Swerve for threatening children. Page's logic from the inside was terrifyingly coherent. If that's who the audience wanted, they deserved each other. That's where Will Ospreay walked in. 8 years in New Japan, IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, widely considered the best active wrestler on the planet when he arrived in AEW. He came with no grudge against Page, no grievance, no history to weaponize. They met in the final of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, and what they gave each other was competition. Clean, honorable competition, the kind Page hadn't had in a long time. Page won. He helped Ospreay to his feet after. They shook hands. The crowd stood. No betrayals, no post-match beatdowns, just two people who'd given everything to each other for 20 minutes, standing in the middle of the ring, shaking hands while the building rose around them. For Page, something shifted in that moment. Ospreay had reminded him that the version of himself capable of this still existed, that winning didn't have to come from hate, that he could still be the man who won that way, with the crowd behind him, and mean it. When Moxley was champion again, Jon Moxley, who WWE fans will know as Dean Ambrose, leading his faction the Death Riders and running roughshod over the entire roster, Ospreay tried to broker an alliance between Page and Strickland. The Death Riders were dismantling everyone, and Ospreay's calculation was simple. Two men who hated Moxley more than they hated each other could end it faster than anyone working alone. That looked hopeless for weeks. The two men still wanted nothing to do with each other. What finally shifted it was Ospreay throwing himself in front of a superkick meant for Strickland during a Death Riders ambush, absorbing it on behalf of a man he'd been treating as an enemy. One act with no calculation behind it. Strickland had spent 2 years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Ospreay didn't. That's the thing that got through. Strickland's distrust cracked. The title match, Page versus Moxley, was a Texas death match, the kind of war both their histories demanded. The Death Riders interfered. Reinforcements came. When the chaos cleared, it was just Page and the ghost he'd been chasing. Then Swerve appeared. Ospreay had gotten to him, convinced him to show up for the man who burned his house down, because beating the Death Riders mattered more than the 2 years of everything between them. In his hand, a steel chain, the same one he'd once wrapped around Page's throat to drag him into darkness. He tossed it across the ring to Page. The crowd froze. Every scar, every drop of blood, every burned house between them, sitting in Page's hands. Page wrapped the chain around Moxley's throat and pulled until the Death Rider tapped. The building came apart. Think about what was in that ring at that moment. A man who spent years wandering backstage with a pitcher of beer because he couldn't figure out why the good things kept not happening to him. Who won the world title and then watched his own darkness come for him anyway. Who burned a house down and had to live in that version of himself for over a year, with no clean moment of redemption waiting, because wrestling doesn't always give you one of those. And the man who put him there didn't have to. Swerve Strickland had every reason to let Page lose. The crib, the home, 2 years of the most personal, ugliest feud AEW had ever run. He could have stayed in the back. He could have watched. Nobody in that building would have blamed him. He walked out anyway. He threw the chain to the man who burned his house down. And by doing that, in front of everyone who'd watched all of it, Swerve closed the feud in a way no match could have. A war that brutal doesn't end with a pin. It ends when one of them decides to stop. That's not a feel-good ending. That's something stranger and heavier. Two people who put each other through hell, standing on opposite ends of the same chain, with the crowd losing their minds because they understood what it meant before anyone said a word. People talk about AEW's best moments, and they usually go to the stadium matches, the surprise returns, the spectacle. The Hangman Page championship win is quieter than all of those. No pyro, no confetti. Just a man on his knees with a chain, and every person in that building finally exhaling. He held the championship for months, lost it eventually to MJF. That's its own story. The point is what the road looked like. Every scar he's carrying, he put there himself. He still has to live with all of it. Whatever he does next, he does it as the man who went through all of that and came out the other side with the belt. That character exists because someone let him build it. All of it. The drinking, the descent, the thing with the house. AEW gave him the room to take it where the character needed to go. You can't write that from the outside. Look, if you're still watching WWE and loving it, genuinely, that's great. Keep watching. But if you're in a period where you want something to watch alongside WWE, or you've got a gap to fill between premium live events, this is it. AEW is messier. The pacing is different. You'll miss references if you haven't been watching. That's real. What you get in return is characters built from the inside out. Christian Cage didn't get handed the Patriarch. He invented it, pitched it to whoever would listen, and then spent 3 years going further with it than anyone expected. Kenny Omega built the psychology of a man running from his own doubt across 15 years and 2 continents. Swerve Strickland told the company what he was going to do, and then did it. And when the crowd started cheering for a man who stood over a baby's crib in the dark, the company trusted what the crowd was telling them. Hangman Page built a character so psychologically dense that burning down a man's childhood home followed logically from watching him drink alone in a corridor 6 years earlier. That's what creative freedom actually produces when it works. People who know their character well enough to take them somewhere real. Swerve's chain in Hangman's hands doesn't mean anything if Swerve didn't decide to throw it. That's not a storyline decision. That's a man who understood both characters well enough to know that was the only ending that made sense. There's so much more of it. That's what's here when you're ready. See you in the next one.